Chapter 1. The Thought That Slipped Out. The Aurora's reach groaned like a tired beast as her plasma conduits strained against another surge. The deck vibrated beneath Eli Mercer's boots, each tremor rattling tools against the bulkhead. The faint ozone tang of overheated circuitry filled the air, mixing with the ever-present metallic tang of recycled oxygen. He wiped sweat from his brow, fingers smudged with conductive grease, and forced himself deeper into the conduit crawl space. Behind him, a shadow loomed, faster human. The voice was smooth and cold, like water running over stone. Captain Nalira of the Zeyari crouched at the hatch, her tall, elegant frame folding with an ease that made Eli's own movements feel clumsy. Her silver-tinged skin reflected the emergency lights, and her crystalline eyes caught every flicker of plasma, as if dissecting the universe itself. "I'm moving as fast as the system lets me," Eli grunted, twisting his wrist to align the fusion coupling. Sparks spat across his glove. He hissed, shaking out his hand. "Unless you want to hold deck depressurized, maybe don't rush me." There was a pause and a soft, disdainful exhale. Among Zeyari, it wasn't quite laughter, but it carried the same sting. Eli muttered under his breath, too exhausted to measure the words. Hell of a time to notice her damn perfect, but... The world froze. The hum of the engine seemed suddenly louder, pulsing through the metal like a heartbeat. Eli's own pulse spiked as the realization slammed into him. Zeyari hearing. Hypersensitive. Stupid. Slowly, he turned his head. Delira's posture had changed, no longer the composed commander overseeing repairs. She stood rigid, her elongated pupils narrowing, her gaze locking onto him with something unreadable. Not fury, not quite, but it was sharp enough to cut. "You." Her voice was low, dangerous, yet there was a flicker of something else. Curiosity? Confusion? "You speak of my form as though you have claim to it." Eli swallowed hard, feeling the crawl space suddenly smaller, hotter. That's not what it was a slip." The captain tilted her head. The gesture was precise, alien and unsettling in its calm. "Among my people, such words are not careless. They are declarations." "Declarations?" Eli tried to laugh, but it came out dry. "Lady, where I come from, that was just an idiot's brain not staying his mouth." Her crystalline eyes softened, just slightly, like cracks forming in a sheet of ice. She studied him with unnerving intensity, as though trying to read more than words, measuring his heartbeat, his sweat, the tremor in his jaw. "You speak without fear," she said finally, almost to herself. No Zeyari would dare such bluntness to a commander. Yet you do. Eli tightened the last coupling with a snap, pulling himself out of the conduit. He stood, meeting her gaze even though his chest was tight. Maybe that's the problem with the rest of the galaxy. Too scared to just be human. The engines roared back to steady life, the deck settling under their feet. For a long, breathless moment, neither of them moved. Delira's eyes glimmered, reflecting both the plasma glow and something deeper, an intrigue that Eli couldn't name. Her response, when it came, was quiet. "We will speak of this again." Eli exhaled slowly, realizing too late that his life had just changed, and not in any way he could have predicted. Chapter 2, Alien Honor, Human Heart. The captain's quarters were nothing like the cramped bunks the human engineers shared. Eli had expected austere military efficiency, maybe a desk and a cot bolted to the wall. Instead, the chamber hummed with quiet elegance. Translucent panels glowing with bioluminescent light, an ever-shifting mural of starlight projected across the ceiling, and the faint aroma of something floral, alien, sharp yet sweet, like crushed crystal and ozone. The door sealed behind him with a whisper. For a moment, Eli considered bolting, but then she entered. Captain Nalira moved with the silence of someone who owned every shadow in the room. She shed her shoulder mantle, its black plating catching the soft light, and placed it on a stand. Without the armor, her figure seemed even taller, lean muscle flowing under silvered skin etched with faint, natural markings that shimmered faintly with her pulse. Her crystalline eyes fixed on him, unblinking. You spoke words no human should. Her tone was flat, but it cut deeper than a blade. Eli tried for a shrug, though his palms were damp. I already said it was a mistake. Mouth got ahead of brain. Happens to us. Her head tilted slightly. Zeyari disdain mixed with fascination. Among my people, no words are mistakes. To speak is to bind. When you marked my form, you marked me. Do you understand? Eli frowned. Back home, what I said would just make me an idiot, or maybe get me slapped. Nobody calls it a binding declaration. A flicker of something crossed her face, the faintest twitch of lips that might have been a smile, or a baring of teeth. She stepped closer, her height forcing Eli to tilt his head back. You stand by it, then? You claim you find strength, beauty in me? Her voice sharpened on the last word, testing him. Eli's gut clenched. Every instinct screamed at him to dodge, to retreat. But he saw the steel in her eyes, and something else, an ember beneath the ice. If he backed down, she would never respect him again. So he swallowed hard and said, steady as he could, Yeah, I meant it. You're strong, commanding, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't drawn to that. The silence that followed was suffocating. Eli could hear the faint thrum of the ship's engines through the deck, feel the recycled air brush against his neck. His heart hammered like a percussion gun in his chest. The Lyra did not move for several seconds. Then, slowly, she lowered herself into a chair carved from obsidian alloy. The movement was graceful, ritualistic, as though she were marking a change in the atmosphere. No other species speaks so recklessly, she said at last, her crystalline gaze never leaving his. Your kind fascinates the High Council. Humans who rush into danger, who speak without chains, who fail and rise again. But fascination is not respect. One day, Eli Mercer, your lack of restraint will see you destroyed. Eli forced a crooked grin, though his throat was tight. Or maybe it's the only reason we survive at all. Her expression remained unreadable, but her eyes shimmered as if she were seeing him anew, not just as a subordinate, but as a puzzle, a threat, perhaps even something more. When she spoke again, her voice had softened just barely. Very well. Human, you have stood by your words. But know this, among the Zeyari, declarations demand consequence. You cannot escape what you have begun. Eli's grin faded. Somehow, I figured you'd say that. The lights dimmed with the ship's night cycle, bathing the chamber in deep violet glow. The air between them thrummed with unspoken tension. And Eli knew with sudden clarity, this was no accident anymore. Whatever line he'd crossed, there was no way back. Chapter 3. Fire in the engine room. The warning klaxons hit like a punch to the skull. Red strobes flashed along the corridor, turning the silver walls into a rhythm of blood and shadow. The auroras reached lurched sideways under weapons fire, and Eli slammed against a bulkhead, pain jolting through his ribs. Raiders, the Lyra hissed, her voice cutting through the alarms. She was already striding toward the nearest weapons locker, her stride long, purposeful, while the ship buckled again. Eli pushed himself upright, lungs burning. They hit the starboard shields. Engineering's bleeding power. He didn't wait for permission. He ran. The corridors dissolved into chaos. Zeyari crew sprinted in disciplined silence, their armor glinting under emergency light. Eli stood out like a wild spark, barely armored, carrying only a plasma wrench, his boots slipping as the artificial gravity flickered. He burst into engineering and felt his stomach flip. The grav stabilizers had failed. Suddenly he was floating, tools and debris spinning past in a cloud. The air stank of burning insulation. Sparks cascaded from a ruptured conduit like fireworks. Mercer. Thalira's voice snapped behind him. She'd followed, moving with predatory grace and zero-G, pushing off walls with her long limbs. Even in chaos, she looked carved from calm iron. Eli wrestled with a failing plasma core, the sphere glowing dangerously, contained only by flickering magnetic fields. If this blows, we all get turned into stardust. The ship shuddered again as Raider fire tore through another section. A fracture split the hull plating, and suddenly the world howled, a violent vacuum ripping air and smoke into the void. The sucking roar pulled Eli off his grip, hurling him toward the breach. Human! A silver blur shot past him. Delira's arm clamped around his waist, her claws digging into the wall plating. The vacuum tugged at them both, dragging their bodies toward the abyss. Eli's vision filled with stars, endless and merciless. Do something, she barked. Adrenaline cut through his terror. He twisted in her grip, spotted the plasma core still spinning dangerously free, and had a stupid idea. Hang on. He ripped the containment seals off a nearby power coil, jury-rigging the magnetic flow with a wrench and a half-burned data cable. Electricity screamed across his gloves, burning the tips of his fingers. The plasma core hummed, caught in the magnetic stream, and Eli slingshotted it through the breach. The glowing sphere shot into space like a comet. A heartbeat later, boom! The Raiders' ship that had latched onto their hull vanished in a blossom of fire and twisted metal. The shock wave slammed into the Aurora's reach, sealing the breach with emergency shutters as the ship stabilized. Gravity groaned back into place, slamming Eli onto the deck. He lay there, gasping, fingers smoking, the smell of ozone and charred skin sharp as his nose. When his vision cleared, Delira was crouched above him. Her crystalline eyes were wide, not with anger, but with something far rarer, awe. You risked detonation to core, she said, her voice low, unreadable. Yeah, Eli rasped, forcing a crooked smile. But it worked. Her claws brushed his wrist lightly, not quite a touch, more like the ghost of one. No Zeyari would have dared such recklessness. That's human for you, Eli muttered, sitting up with a wince. We're too stubborn to die properly. For a long moment, she studied him, her expression caught between fury and reluctant admiration, and in the silence of the humming engines, Eli realized something had shifted. He was no longer just a fragile human engineer under her command. He was something she would have to reckon with. Chapter 4, The Unspoken Challenge. The Aurora's reach drifted in low orbit around Veros Prime, its scarred hull patched with gleaming welds. The planet below glowed like a living jewel, its atmosphere painted in emerald swirls. Cities glittering with latticework spires that pulsed faintly in the darkness. From the observation deck, Eli should have been admiring the view. Instead, he was chewing on the inside of his cheek, waiting. The door hissed open behind him. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. The air itself seemed to sharpen when she entered. Eli Mercer, Captain Delira said, her voice cutting the silence. He glanced over his shoulder. She wore no armor now, only the formal attire of a Zeyari commander, dark fabric interlaced with crystalline strands that shimmered faintly with each movement. It gave her an austere beauty, dangerous and magnetic all at once. You wanted to see me? Eli asked, folding his arms across his chest. Her gaze flickered to the planet outside, then back to him. You have brought whispers among my crew. They claim you have marked me, that you invoked the first binding without meaning to. Eli frowned. First binding? I don't even know what that is. Her eyes narrowed, crystalline facets catching the stars. It is a rite older than the council itself. To speak openly of a commander's form is to challenge the barriers of command. It is a declaration of intimacy, of desire. The word left her lips with a strange weight, like something forbidden. Eli exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. So me being a dumbass translates into, what, a courtship ritual for your people? Yes. She stepped closer, her height casting a shadow over him. And such things cannot be ignored. His throat tightened, but he forced himself to hold her gaze. And what do you want to do about it? Take it back? Pretend I didn't say it? Delira's jaw flexed, as though the suggestion itself were offensive. Words cannot be unsaid. Among the Zeyari, to retract is weakness. But you? Her eyes softened just slightly. You spoke with no fear. You risked your life with no hesitation. You act without chains. That's just being human, Eli said quietly. We screw up. We improvise. Sometimes that saves the day. Sometimes it makes things messy. But it's who we are. She studied him for a long moment, her breathing slow, deliberate. Then unexpectedly she asked, Why? Eli blinked. Why what? Why speak of me that way? Was it only your lack of control? Or is there truth in it? His pulse quickened. He wanted to look away, but couldn't. It wasn't just random. I've noticed you for a long time, not just the shape of you. His voice dipped, steady but raw. The way you carry yourself. The way the crew listens when you don't even raise your voice. You're terrifying, sure, but you're also unforgettable. The silence that followed was heavier than the vacuum of space. Delira's crystalline eyes shone brighter, her chest rising and falling with a measured breath. You are reckless, she said at last, voice hushed. Reckless in word, in action, and in truth. Eli gave a crooked grin, though his stomach nodded. Guess that's our specialty. Her gaze lingered on him, unreadable but no longer cold. Then know this. You have begun something that neither of us can stop. The council will demand consequence. She turned, the fabric of her attire whispering with her movement, leaving him alone with the stars. And Eli, heart pounding, realized that what started as a stupid slip of the tongue was now a collision course between two worlds, two cultures, and the growing pull between them. Chapter 5, Beyond Belief. The High Council chamber of Eros Prime was a cathedral of light and shadow. Towering crystalline pillars spiraled upward, refracting the glow of suspended orbs that pulsed like captive stars. Each breath of air carried the faint scent of ionized minerals, cold and sharp, as though the room itself were alive. Eli stood near the base of the dais, his boots scuffing against the obsidian floor polished to a mirror's sheen. He felt exposed, a fragile piece of flesh in a temple built for giants. Around him, Zeyari nobles whispered in tones like breaking glass, their slit-pupiled eyes darting to the human intruder with visible disdain. And at the center of it all stood Captain Nalira, regal, unflinching, clad in her ceremonial mantle of black and silver. She was a very picture of command. Yet Eli caught the faintest tension in her jaw, the coiled readiness in her shoulders. One of the high counselors, a towering male whose crystalline markings burned red in the chamber's light, rose from his throne. His voice rang like thunder rolling across stone. Delira of the Reach, you have been summoned to account for a breach of discipline most grave. Your subordinate has spoken the words of binding. Do you deny this? Delira's chin lifted, every syllable precise. I do not deny it. The chamber erupted in hisses and murmurs, echoing like blades scraping against glass. Eli clenched his fists. He didn't understand all their words, but he knew enough. He was a problem, maybe even a death sentence. The counselor's eyes burned into the Lyra. Then tradition is clear. You must cast him aside. His insolence cannot stain the chain of command. He will be exiled or executed. A cold weight pressed into Eli's chest, but before he could open his mouth, the Lyra stepped forward. No. The word cut through the chamber like a plasma lance. Silence fell. Delira's crystalline eyes flashed with defiance. He is no stain. He is proof. This human risked himself to save the Aurora's reach. He stood against the void when no one else dared. To discard him is not justice. It is cowardice. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The red-marked counselor leaned forward, his tone sharp. You would defy us for this frail thing? This human? Delira's voice deepened, every syllable ringing with ritual weight. I invoke the right of choosing. By our oldest law, I claim him not as subordinate, but as my chosen mate. The chamber exploded. Crystalline voices shrieked, some outraged, others disbelieving. Eli's ears rang with the storm of alien language. His heart hammered. Mate? Did she just... The counselor slammed his staff against the dais, cracking the obsidian floor. Unthinkable. To bind with an off-worlder, an aberration. Enough. Eli's voice cracked like a whip across the chamber. Every alien eye swung toward him, and for the first time in his life, Eli felt truly small. But he forced his chin up, his throat raw but steady. You look at me and see weakness, flesh and blood. But humans aren't weak. We fall, we break, and we get back up again. We love so fiercely it burns. We fight until there's nothing left, then we keep fighting anyway. He spread his hands, palms scarred from burns and grease. That's who we are. That's who I am. And if that makes me unworthy in your eyes, then you don't deserve her loyalty. The chamber rang with silence, so deep Eli swore he could hear the hum of the city outside. Delira's gaze locked on him, unreadable but shimmering with something fierce. Pride, perhaps, or something even more dangerous. The red counselor sneered, but his voice wavered. You are reckless, both of you, but the right is binding. You may walk free, but you are cast out of our command, stripped of title and standing. Let the galaxy judge you both. A hiss of finality filled the chamber. Delira turned, her mantle flowing like liquid shadow, and stepped to Eli's side. She placed one clawed hand briefly on his shoulder, a gesture so intimate it felt like fire under his skin. Come, human, she murmured, her tone both steel and warmth. We have carved our own path now. And as the chamber's crystalline light fractured around them, Eli knew this was no longer just about survival. This was about defiance, loyalty, and something dangerously close to love. Chapter 6, Stars Between Us. The Aurora's reach slipped free of Eros Prime's orbit, her patched hull glowing faintly where the planet's emerald light kissed her scars. Behind them, the crystalline spires of the High Council city dwindled into glittering needles, and beyond that, the endless dark of the void stretched out like a canvas waiting to be painted. Eli stood on the observation deck, palms braced against the cold glass. The engines hummed beneath his feet, a sound he had once hated for its monotony, now comforting, like the heartbeat of a stubborn beast that refused to die. He should have felt relief. Instead, a gnawing unease twisted in his chest. They were exiles now. He had ripped Delira from everything she had built, from the command she had bled for. He heard the door hiss open. He didn't turn. Your silence is loud, human, Delira said softly, stepping into the starlight. Without her mantle of command, she seemed less like a statue of authority and more alive. The crystalline markings along her arms pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. I was just thinking, Eli muttered, wondering if I doomed you, pulled you off the pedestal you deserved to stand on. Delira came to stand beside him. Her reflection caught in the glass, tall and luminous against the void. The council offered me chains disguised as honor. You broke them. She turned, her gaze piercing. You gave me freedom. Eli barked a short laugh, though it cracked at the edges. Yeah, freedom, exile, a ship barely holding together, and a crew that doesn't know if they should salute you or mutiny. She studied him, then reached out, hesitant at first, then deliberate. Her clawed fingers brushed the back of his hand. not gripping, just resting there. For Zeyari, it was a gesture far louder than words. "You speak always with fire," she said quietly. "You act without restraint. Among my people, that is madness, but in you it feels like truth." Eli's throat tightened. He turned his hand, fingers curling around hers, rough human skin against crystalline alien strength. "Back home, we call it being stupidly honest. Guess that's our one real weapon out here." Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. Honesty, stubbornness, recklessness. These are not weapons, Eli Mercer. They are shields. And somehow, they make you stronger than any warrior I have ever known. They stood together, the stars spilling their endless light across them. For the first time, the silence between them was not heavy with tension. It was filled with possibility. The Lyra leaned closer, her voice dropping to something almost human in its vulnerability. "No Zeyari has ever unsettled me as you do. No commander, no rival. Only you." Eli's grin came slow, crooked but real. And it all started because I couldn't keep my damn mouth shut. A low, musical sound escaped her, half laugh, half sigh. Perhaps some truths are worth speaking. The hum of the engines deepened as the aurora's reach surged into faster than light, the stars stretching into brilliant streams. The planet, the council, the weight of expectation, all fell away behind them. Side by side, hands still touching, they stared into the streaking abyss. Not commander and subordinate, not alien and human, just two souls who had defied a galaxy. For the first time in years, Eli Mercer felt like the universe wasn't something he was lost in. It was something he could claim, with her. And somewhere in the quiet between stars, something new was born. The aurora's reach drifted in the quiet between galaxies, her hull scarred but alive, her engines thrumming with a steady pulse of survival. Beyond the viewport, alien constellations shimmer like jeweled mosaics, unfamiliar yet strangely welcoming. In the observation deck, the faint tug of artificial gravity grounded Eli Mercer as he leaned against the glass. Staring into the infinite, the Lyra joined him without a word. Her crystalline markings glowed softly in the starlight, no longer the cold sigils of a commander bound by duty, but the quiet rhythm of someone who had chosen her own path. For a moment, they said nothing, the hum of the ship and the endless expanse around them filling the silence. "You've cost me everything," she murmured at last, her voice low but steady. Eli turned, searching her alien eyes. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure it was worth it." Her hand found his, clawed, strong, trembling just slightly, and in that fragile, deliberate gesture, the weight of their journey came full circle. Defiance, exile, survival, and something far more dangerous, love. Outside, a new nebula unfurled in violet fire, painting them both in light. "Perhaps," the Lyra whispered, her gaze softening, "the galaxy needed a human heart to remind it what freedom feels like." Eli smiled, the kind of smile that carried scars and hope alike. "Then let's go remind the whole damn universe." Together, they stood as the stars stretched into brilliant rivers, stepping into a future they had forged with stubbornness, honesty, and fire, proof that sometimes being human was the most extraordinary thing of all.